I didn't realize it at the time, but the moment the notary cleared his throat and looked up from his glowing computer screen, everything I had worked so hard for over the past 6 years simply disappeared in an instant. We have a very serious problem, Mr. Cole. I'm afraid I can't proceed with the closing on this house today. My name is Ethan Cole. I was 38 years old that afternoon, standing in a cold, sterile office that smelled of stale coffee and old paper, next to the woman I thought would be by my side for the rest of my life. Claire stood right beside me. Her hand was resting lightly on my arm, that familiar, gentle touch I had grown so used to. It was the same hand that used to squeeze mine tightly when we were young and broke, sitting on the floor of our tiny studio apartment, eating cheap instant noodles and laughing while flipping through real estate magazines, dreaming about the house we would one day own together. The notary continued speaking in that low, clinical tone, almost like he was reading the weather. There's an outstanding judgment in your name, Mr. Cole. It was signed 5 years ago, just months after your wedding. The current balance, including interest and all the penalties, is $92,000. 92,000. Those words landed like a heavy punch to the stomach. My chest tightened. The room suddenly felt freezing cold. I could actually hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I turned my head slowly to look at Claire. Her face wasn't just pale anymore. It was a perfectly controlled mask of fear. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice trembling in just the right way to sound innocent and helpless. I can explain everything." "It's not what it looks like, I promise." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my hand on the desk. I simply looked straight at the notary and said in a surprisingly steady voice, "Please print every single page. I want to see all the signatures." While the printer started making that loud, rhythmic whirring sound, my mind suddenly flashed back 5 years. It was a quiet Tuesday night right after our honeymoon. I had come home completely exhausted from a huge project at the architecture firm. Claire sat down next to me on our old, worn-out couch, gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and said with that sweet smile I loved so much, "You're working so incredibly hard for us, honey. Let me take care of all the boring stuff. The bills, the taxes, the bank statements, everything. I'll handle it, so you can focus on building our future together." I remember smiling, pulling her close, and kissing her forehead. At that moment, I thought it was the purest kind of love. I thought it was real partnership. I had no idea that I had just handed her complete control over my financial life. Back in the parking lot, the bright spring sunlight felt almost mocking. I got into the driver's seat, waited for Claire to sit down, and then handed her the thick stack of printed documents without starting the engine. "You want to tell me the truth right now? Or should I drive straight to the police station and let them start digging into everything?" The silence inside the car was suffocating. It stretched longer and longer. I watched a small bird land on the hood of the car, then fly away again. Finally, Claire broke. The tears came first, quietly, then turned into heavy, ragged sobs. "It was for my brother Marcus. He got mixed up with some dangerous people because of gambling debts. I was scared for him. I thought I could handle it quietly and pay everything back from our savings before you even noticed anything was missing." She only admitted to $48,000 at first. But I'm an architect. I can spot when something is structurally wrong from a mile away. I took her phone. She hesitated for just a split second before handing it over. No password, of course, because we were supposed to have no secrets in our marriage. I didn't waste time reading texts or looking at photos. I went straight to the banking apps. That was when the first real wave of betrayal hit me like a truck. There weren't just 1 or 2 loans. There were 3 separate high-interest loans from different lenders, all opened using my Social Security number and my name. And the worst part? The automatic monthly transfers were still going out, every single month, straight to her brother. While I was working 80-hour weeks, skipping vacations, wearing the same pair of shoes for 3 years just to save for our dream house down payment, her brother was living large on a yacht in Miami, posting pictures with new luxury watches and expensive cars. Then I noticed the other recurring transfers labeled Mom's medical expenses. My mother-in-law, Martha, wasn't sick at all. She had never been sick. We had literally just had brunch with her the previous Sunday, where she was excitedly talking about her upcoming trip to the Caribbean. Claire started crying even harder. "It's family, Ethan. You've built so much success, and they had nothing. I was just trying to balance the scales for everyone." That night, I couldn't bring myself to go home. The house no longer felt like ours. It felt like a lie. I checked into a cheap motel on the outskirts of town, spread every single document across the thin bedspread, and sat there staring at them until the sun rose the next morning. The real investigation started the following day. First, Daniel Reeves from Northbridge Financial called me in and showed me all the irregular authorization patterns. He asked the question that became the turning point. Did you personally authorize any of these debts? I looked him straight in the eyes and answered clearly. No, I didn't even know they existed. Later that afternoon, I sat down with investigator Hayes, a calm, experienced man in his late 50s who had clearly seen every kind of human betrayal before. He slid a thick folder across the table and delivered the next blow. "Mr. Cole, there's more. We traced over $32,000 from those loan proceeds into a private, high-yield investment account opened in your wife's maiden name." He let that sink in for a moment, then played a recorded customer service call from one of the lenders. I heard Martha's voice, calm, confident, and completely composed, pretending to be my authorized representative. In the background, I could clearly hear Claire whispering instructions, feeding her my mother's maiden name and other personal details. It wasn't a desperate attempt to help family. It wasn't a one-time mistake. It was a cold, well-planned, 5-year-long conspiracy between Claire and her mother. They had been building a secret Life After Ethan fund using my name, my credit score, and my complete blind trust. While I was happily planning our future, talking about having kids and dreaming about retirement together, they were quietly preparing her escape route, waiting for the perfect moment to leave me buried in debt. I stayed in that motel for 3 full days, barely eating or sleeping. I kept replaying every single moment of our marriage. Every time I came home exhausted from work and told her, "Don't worry about the mail, I trust you." Every late night, "I love you," that now felt like a strategic move to stop me from asking too many questions. Every time I chose peace and trust instead of checking the numbers. I realized the anger I felt wasn't just toward Claire and Martha. I was deeply mourning the old version of myself, the trusting, tired, conflict-avoiding man who had handed someone else the pen to his entire life because he was too exhausted to hold it himself. I didn't go home to scream or start a big dramatic fight. Instead, I called my lawyer the very next day and filed a formal affidavit of identity theft. When the police officer warned me that this would mean criminal charges against my own wife, I answered without any hesitation. She forged my signature and tried to steal my future. Yes, I'm pressing full charges. The weeks that followed were long, painful, and strangely powerful because of one thing: complete silence. There were endless, sobbing voicemails from Martha calling me heartless and a betrayer of family. There were angry, threatening messages from her brother Marcus. There were desperate, pleading texts from Claire, promising to fix everything if I would just talk to her. I blocked every single number. I changed the locks on the house and my office. I didn't reply to a single message. That total, unbroken silence became my strongest weapon. The less I said, the more they panicked and unraveled. Claire even showed up at my office one afternoon, banging desperately on the glass door with tears streaming down her face, begging me to give her one more chance to explain. I looked at her through the glass and felt only emptiness. I didn't open the door. I simply called security and went back to my desk. The legal process was slow and exhausting, with months of paperwork and stress. But because I reported everything immediately, the bank was able to freeze the secret investment account, which still contained $42,000 of my money. Eventually, the $92,000 judgment was successfully contested and completely removed from my name. The inheritance my mother had left me, the money Claire had been quietly trying to get access to, remained safe and untouched. The very last time I saw Claire was on a cold, gray, rainy Tuesday afternoon at the storage unit. She was loading the last of her boxes into her car, looking small, soaked, and completely diminished. She looked up at me and asked one final question, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is this really the end, Ethan?" 6 years of our lives, all thrown away over one simple mistake? I looked at her with a kind of clarity I hadn't felt in many years. It wasn't a mistake, Claire. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill. What you and your mother did was a long-term, carefully calculated heist built on years of lies. You didn't love me. You loved the stability and the money I provided while you were busy preparing your escape door. I didn't wait for her to reply. I didn't need any last words. I simply turned around, walked to my car, and drove away, without looking in the rearview mirror even once. I live in a different city now. My credit score has recovered, but I am a much more careful man. I personally read every single line of every document. I check every footnote twice. I no longer delegate the boring stuff to anyone. Looking back, that wasn't revenge against Claire or her mother. That was my quiet revenge on the old version of Ethan Cole, the man who confused real love with blind, naive trust. The man who was too tired and too afraid of conflict to ever question the person sleeping right next to him. I should have seen the warning signs much earlier, but the moment that notary spoke those devastating words, I didn't explode in anger. I didn't beg or argue. I simply stepped back, faced the full, ugly truth, protected myself, and slowly started becoming the stronger, wiser man I was always meant to be. Have you ever discovered that the person you loved and trusted most was quietly rewriting your entire future behind your back? Have you ever realized that your deepest trust was actually someone else's perfect opportunity? If you have, tell me your story in the comments below. I read every single one. And always remember this: sometimes the most powerful thing you can do when someone lies straight to your face is simply to stop giving them any voice in your future. I'm Ethan Cole. Thank you for listening to my story. I'll see you in the next one.